Okay, now let's continue with the wrap text option. So wrap text, let's first take our picture, and I'm going to move it. I'm actually going to delete this whole paragraph right here just to not have to look at that anymore. Okay, so now our picture, you notice, if we move it around, for me, it's making the text move out of the way. Well, we can change the behavior of the picture with respect to the text, and that's the wrap text option. So the option currently that it's the default is the square wrapping. Now you can change this so you have a tight wrapping, which with a square like this or a rectangle, it's not going to make that much of a difference. But let's go with through, and let's see if there's any difference with square. So there's a slight change through and square, maybe a bigger boundary around the picture. Top and bottom, well, that just means the picture can't have any text on the sides of it. So it'll push the text out of the way. Where'd my picture go? There we go. And other options that are available: behind text, so the picture will go behind; in front of text, it'll sit on top of it. All right, let's change back to square. Put our picture maybe right here, just for to display our next point, because what we can do, we have currently wrap points, and these are the points that the text has to stay out of. So you see the little red margin around the picture, and normally the wrap points are just set so that they're right on the outside of your picture, but you can tuck them in a little, and the text will start to creep in. And you can turn that off when you're done. So maybe you wanted the picture, for whatever reason, to come in a little. You can do that. That's fine. It looks a little funny in this picture, but maybe there's cases where it would be useful. Next, let's look at more layout options. And you can change it so that the text only wraps on the left side, on the right side, or whichever one is bigger, so the text is bigger on the right. And then you can change the distance on both the left and the right. So if you bump up that, it's almost like a margin around the picture. I think of it as a little buffer zone. It means how far from that wrap point, or that red line, how far is it going to be. So you can really make it large so that it's not infringing on the picture whatsoever. Okay, now to display our next buttons, we're going to need a few more pictures. So I'm going to move the snail top right, and I am going to insert some more pictures. And I'm going to put this giant land snail, and I'm going to make it a little smaller. And then one more. Okay. Great. So let's make those tinier, and maybe we want to have a nice collection of snail pictures. Now here's a problem. I don't see one of my pictures. Well, let's open the selection pane. Uh-oh. I only have 2 pictures, so it looks like what I did, I inserted one of my pictures in place of the other one. Let's go back and grab this guy. There he is. Okay, so there they go. And now I kind of want to make a little montage, an arrangement of these snails. So let me first change the wrapping to whatever this guy has. He's has tight wrapping. Actually, let's all put them just in front of the text. And same for him, and same for him. So let me use my shift button to grab more than one snail at once, if it'll let me. It's not letting me. That's okay. So in front. In front. Okay, so let's drag them, resize. They're actually right now in the order that I want them to be in terms of which is on top of which. But let's say, that looks kind of nice. Let's say you wanted this one to go underneath this big picture. Well, you can do things like send backward. And now this guy's on top. Okay, and I don't like the look of that one as much because this is the biggest. But you can essentially just go around playing with the order, so you can send this one backward, and then if you send it backward again, it's behind this picture as well. So they're laid out in a stack, and by clicking on send backward or send forward multiple times, watch, I'm going to send this one forward, and I had to click on it 2 or 3 times to get it there. Okay, so now he's on the top, now he's in the middle, and the bottom. So let's put him in the middle. And there we go. I like that little arrangement. Now, what is the selection pane for? Well, it's just to help you select the pictures you want. Sometimes you have images that, for whatever reason, you're clicking on them and they just don't want to be selected. Well, all you have to do is go in here and change that. Or not change it, but click on the one you want, and it'll grab it for you. You see how these are close together? That could be potentially a problem when it comes to clicking. Next thing that we need to do is look at this align group. So align can let us push things to the left, the center, right, top, bottom, so on and so forth. What if I put distribute horizontally for this snail? That's going to put him perfectly in the middle of the horizontal margins. I can do the same vertically as well, but I liked him where he was. Okay, but then you can do align left, align right, so on and so forth. Center is right in the middle. Okay, so that's the alignment tool, and then you have other options down here: align to page and align to margin. So usually, or when you use these options, this is what it's referring to. Do you want it to put it all the way to the side of the page or the margin? You got to specify which one you want, because this is the page, and then if I do it to the margin instead, align left, that's aligning to the margin. Bit of a difference there. If you don't pick, it's going to just have it usually on margin for you. Okay, let's go back to page layout, and a few last options here. You can view the grid lines behind the paper, and you can change the settings for the grid. So you can change how much, or what's the size of the squares in the grid, make them bigger. You can do things like snap objects to the grid when the grid lines are not displayed. So right now that's turned off, but they're still looking like they're snapping possibly because my grid is on. Let's turn it off. And notice how I can move my snail with a lot more fluid movement. He's not snapping to the grid. So let's turn that back on. This option here, when the grid's not displayed, he's still snapping. You can see that jerky movement. Okay, and back to grid settings. You can change where the grid is with respect to the margin, and then you can say show grid. Okay. That's it. And then the only other option is snap objects to other objects. So do you want to make them kind of line up with each other in that same snapping way, or do you want objects to just be able to go wherever you want? Do you want to trust your free hand? So let me turn this off one last time. Okay. Now, I like this little arrangement of snails that I've made, and it still looks like I'm snapping to the grid, so let me turn that off. Go away, grid snapping. There's that nice fluid movement. Okay, now, let's say I want to take this whole little diagram I've made and move it to the other side of the page. Well, sadly, there's more than one way to do this, but I don't want to have to move each picture to the left. So there's a few choices I have here, and one is that I could use my non-adjacent selecting tool, which means I click on one thing, then I hold down Shift and click on another. It also works with Control. So Control is the non-adjacent selecting. Shift is the adjacent. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, that's in the Home tab video. So if I select these all together, they move nicely as one unit. But what if I don't want to have to go and select all three of these things every time? Well, fortunately, I can have an option that allows me to be lazy like that. I can transform them into a group. So I can go to this group and then click Group. And now you'll notice I just have one big picture. And that's a lot simpler and quicker when I just want to quickly grab it and say, all right, you're over here now, or over here now. Now I can go back in and play with the individual components, but another way to do that is to just go ungroup them from each other, and they're back to being by themselves. The last option on the Page Layout tab is pretty straightforward. I can rotate things to the right, left, and then flip them vertically. Not the same as rotating, that's just flipping as in a mirror, or horizontally. And then rotation options will bring me back to this layout box here where I can change the size of my image, so the height, the width, and that can be absolute, like I want it to be absolutely maybe 3 inches by 3, something of that nature, or it could be relative to the size of the page. So I could say 50% of the margin, which means it would take up exactly half of the distance from margin to margin, and that could be either from the top to the bottom margin, or the side to the side margins. Now notice the lock aspect ratio is on. Well, what is that? That means, notice how this said 3 before, right? But when I change this to also say 3, this bumped up. Well, that's because the aspect ratio is on. And that just means, what's the ratio side to side to up and down of my image? And if that's locked, it's only going to allow the image to expand in a way that preserves its original ratio. But luckily, being the picky person I am, or being the picky person that Word allows me to be, I can just turn that off. And then I can say, well, I want you to be exactly 3 by 3, and then if I click OK, notice how it's squared out and it distorted a little, but maybe that's what I wanted. If not, I can go back to the original size, which Word remembered for me very courteously, and then I can reset it. And so these numbers pop back to how they were. There we go. It's back to how it was. And then I wanted to maybe expand it a little. Oh, but I don't think I turned my lock aspect ratio back on. So there we go. And then we can bump it back to where I had it before, more or less. I didn't quite get it exactly, but you get the point. And then I can rotate the pictures to something that's not a 90-degree angle. Like maybe I want it rotated 13 degrees. That's okay. I can do that. And then scale will allow me to blow the image up with respect to the image itself, not with respect to the page. So I want it to be, if it's 133%, that's 1 1/3 the size that it was before. And if my lock aspect ratio is on, then it still moves in a proportional way. So it'll be 133, 133. It'll be locked in terms of each other, but I could always turn that off of what I had. And then I could make it not relative to the original picture size. I could make it relative to whatever the current sizes. So that's another option I have. And I'm just going to click OK. And there's my little diagram, or my I don't know what you'd call it, nice arrangement of snail pictures. And that is it for the page layout tab. Congrats, you now know how to do a lot with images and things like page borders in Word. So be sure to check out the other videos, and thank you for watching.